Excellent. Ken Smith, so excited to see you here today. Welcome on. I'm setting up the chat so that everybody can communicate. Welcome on, folks. Please feel free to let us know you're there and where you're joining us from. A special welcome to all of you on here today. And I'm watching my phone, so if there's any, I know sometimes we've had to reconfigure the chat, but I think we are, here we go. I think we're good to go now. So excellent. Please feel free to try it out, put something in the chat. All right, there we go. Now I'm seeing folks there. Good stuff. Got that going on. Ken, I am just thrilled to be here with you today on this topic of, it's not what you know, but who you know. And I can't imagine anyone better than you to have this conversation with. Welcome.
Well, it's a pleasure to be on, Susan Marie, and I'm looking forward to hearing what I have to say because I don't know what it's going to be, but I hope it's fun.
Well, I know that when we were preparing for today that you talked to me about you got to make a deposit like in people and life before you make a withdrawal. And then you were talking about meeting with a wide range of people, which of course goes to who you know. And tell us more about that here, just to kick us off this morning.
Yes, well, I mean, like anything that you do, you want to make sure that the ingredients are good. So whether it's your nutrition or whether it's your financial planning or whether it's your personal development, you want to be kind of selective. And so I love to be conscious of the fact that I will attract what I've become. So if it's to be, it's up to me. And if I want positive, forward-thinking, goal-oriented people, then I have to demonstrate that by being that myself first. And then this seems like there's a magnetic magic to, opening the gateway to what you wanted to see. And, I was just thinking, like, I know you and I were in Annapolis, Maryland here last week. So I was away and I didn't really want my landscape crew to come in because I've got some newly planted lawn. So what I did is I put a padlock on my gate. I couldn't be here to shoo them away. So I put a padlock on the gate. And I was just thinking, like, if you want to get to know somebody, a lot of times there's some kind of a lock or a barrier there. This padlock has a key. And so in order to get it off the gate, I had to put the key in. And, I think the key in order to open up somebody's mindset or somebody's receptivity to even getting to know you is it's a smile. You can open just about anybody's mindset or receptivity if you'll just smile at them and acknowledge them. And so if you're walking down the sidewalk and somebody's coming the opposite direction and they're kind of feeling awkward and looking away purposely, or maybe you've walked through an airport and somebody's trying to get you to sign up for a credit card or something. It's like, nah, I'm not interested. I'm going to pretend I don't even see you, right? But if you do somebody or acknowledge somebody, all of a sudden you get to know people. And the more people you get to know, the deeper the experience is that you've got to love people. And so if you're a people-centric individual or a people-centric company, then you can't do it without people. So that's, kind of my opening comment is that if you're, the man in the mirror, the woman in the mirror, I love to have this. Before we did things like Zoom, I did a lot of telephone calls over the year. Even though people can't see you, they can tell whether you're frowning or smiling because it just kind of changes your reflection or your deflection, whatever you want to say. It's just like there's this magnetic universe around being positive, forward thinking, open, receptive. And so, it's not who you know or what you know, but who you know, because there's always somebody that could maybe help you out with something. And there's always somebody that you could help out with something. So going into a relationship of any kind with the idea of doing it because you want to get something in return, that's just so obvious. And the bottom line here is that there's a reciprocity component here, is that if you do something for somebody without expecting anything in return, you might not ever get something in return, but the universe has a tendency to repay you with maybe somebody else that you get to know, right?
I love that, Ken. In fact, you had me thinking, I bet if I close my eyes right now and just listen, or any of you out there, if you did that while Ken was talking, you could probably hear his smile. Like, it's an interesting thing that you pointed out there. And just the way in which I've known you over the years, you've got the most amazing smile that you bring to whatever it is that you're doing. And it makes me feel differently about myself. Like, it is the reflection back that you're talking about. And I just see all those books on the shelf behind you there. And I imagine that some of those have made a difference in your really embracing that, or like internally knowing what you're talking about. Talk to us about that. Is that true? Has that made a difference for you? What's kind of fed that awareness for you?
Well, it's interesting because a lot of people think that, it's just a natural occurrence, but it's very intentional. Before I come on a Zoom or something, before the camera even comes on, I do this. And I kid my wife, Patty, all the time, because whenever she comes down or walks by, I can hear her coming down the steps. So I'm always going like, and she goes, there he goes again. There he goes again. But it's just intentional. And it's interesting because even within reach, here's a book right here. When you talk about books, what do you think this title of this is? It's called The Man in the Mirror, right? Does it make you think of Michael Jackson, or what does it make you think of? Does it make you think of Ken Smith? Does it make you think of yourself? And so the beauty of being on a Zoom like this is you don't need the mirror anymore, because you can actually see what you're looking like to the other people. And that is just inviting people to get to know you, because before people know you, like you, and trust you, then there's really no reason to develop any further a relationship. And those relationships can really pay off in spades if it isn't anything more than just feeling good about maybe making somebody else smile when they might not have done that day.
And for those just joining, we're talking about, it's not what you know, it's who you know. And I think Ken just embodies that in like who he is. And it does seem like people sometimes feel almost afraid to talk to other people. It seems ironic, or I'm sure that COVID has just fueled that all the more so. And so talk to us about how you've overcome that. And I think then it becomes like it'll be a self-fulfilling prophecy either way, right? Either you're going to be afraid and not do something, or you're going to do something about it, and then it'll take care of itself. What do you do to overcome that fear, or to help others be able to do the same?
Well, I think it's just becoming a product of, taking that action. So, it's just amazing how you can change an experience when you interface with somebody, come across somebody. There's a couple of different ways to use examples. And there's a movie way a long time ago. I'm just trying to think of what the actual title of it was, but some people might remember what this one was. It was two different things happening at the same time, where it started out where a woman was going down the steps to the underground subway. And the first thing, she's going down, she's rushing, she jumps on the subway train, and it takes off. The second one that happens, about 30 seconds later, she's rushing down the stairs and she stops and she drops her papers and she picks them up, and she misses that car, but she gets on the next one. And then the whole, experience after that shows how much difference, a minute or 2 minutes can take. And so when you smile at somebody, when you take a few moments to appreciate somebody, when you interact with somebody, it's just that little difference between one experience and another. So it's just, we get to decide what our experience is going to be. And even if you can trick yourself, because you can get up and feel kind of low energy, not inspired, not having a good day. And, I can trick myself immediately, because it's just built into my DNA now that, as soon as I'm going to talk to somebody or whatever, or walk past somebody or go on a Zoom or whatever, I smile. And, you can't trick yourself into feeling sad when you're smiling. It's just kind of part of, what's all connected. So, you've got a decision to make there. And by surrounding yourself with people that are already making that a habit, you do become the average of the people that you spend the most time with. And so once again, as I said at the outset here, be very selective of, what you do. What do you put in your mind? I mean, if you want to eat the right kind of food, and drink enough water, you'll probably be healthy. But then there's your mind as well. And one of my favorite mentors and individuals that I had the good fortune to work very closely with was Jim Rohn, and he used to call it bread for the head, you know? Or it's like a computer, GIGO, GIGO, garbage in, garbage out, good in, good out. So, we get a choice to what we're going to consume. And that's really something that is all about this. Who do you know? You're not going to get to know too many people when you're kind of sullen and unapproachable and closed and sad. So if you broaden your range of acquaintances, you broaden the resources that are available to you and all the people around you, because you'll share those individuals if they could help somebody else. You don't have to hold something just for yourself when there's somebody else that could maybe be helped as well.
Oh, I tell you what, Ken, that what you're describing, the smile being like the key in the lock that unlocks that ability to meet people. And I just think that sometimes people listening in right now, and you guys let me know if we're hitting a nerve here for all of you. It might be that some people are feeling like, why bother? Like, why do I really need to even know more people? And what is it really who we know? Like, how does that really bring value to myself or my family or my community or my business for that matter? Because it does take some effort. And I think it's easier sometimes you were talking about being in Annapolis last week, and it's almost easier sometimes for people to be in their own world and the looking down when they walk so that they don't even catch another person's eye. Yeah. And what a difference that makes in what happens next, just like you're describing with that movie. Like every one of those missed opportunities creates a whole different flow of action, cause and action, right? Cause and reaction. So why bother? Why even bother with the who's?
Well, right. And, a lot of people that are listening in or that might see a recorded version of what we're talking about right now probably have a business or work in a business, for example. And I know my wife, Patty, lived in Hong Kong for a couple of years, and we lived in Vancouver, which is affectionately known as Hongcouver, because we have a tremendously high percentage of folks from China and Hong Kong and Singapore. And there's an old Chinese proverb that says, "He who cannot smile should not keep shop." If you go into a place and you're thinking, I'm just looking around, I wonder what it's like in here, and somebody's very gracious and happy and high energy and smiling, you want to stick around a little longer. If somebody's kind of, looking at you, making sure you're not taking anything or stealing anything, or, they're feeling kind of grumpy, you're just kind of doing about face and leave, right? So once again, whether it's for business or personal gratification or just building that database of acquaintances. I mean, there's an old saying. I had a couple of friends over the years that were from New York, and they were kind of like typical New Yorkers, guys that talk like this. Hey, I got a guy for that. It's like, oh man, my hot water tank just burned out. I got a guy for that. And of course, now in the software age, it's like, hey, I got an app for that. But wouldn't it be great if somebody had somebody that they knew that had a relationship with that person? They'd already established that they know them, like them, and trust them. And so because you have this relationship, you trust that individual. It goes like, you know what? I have somebody that you really ought to call. I've had an experience with them, or I know they've got a great reputation. And so that's a resource that is plentiful, and you can share it with other people. And then when somebody thinks of maybe somebody that would be a benefit to you, whether it's on a personal level, a business level, or whatever, they're going to think about you. And it might not even be direct. It might be somebody that you'd, and I know that you're in this same space as well, Susan Marie, that you get calls all the time, as I do, as my wife Patty does. Is like, hey, you don't know me, but a friend of mine was telling me that you have such and such, or you could help me with such and such. And there's nothing better than a referral, whether it's business related or it's just the fact that you feel good that you had another opportunity to help somebody and maybe lighten their load or brighten their day.
No kidding. You're talking to me about this group that I'm a part of called BNI. Their motto is givers gain. And I know that when we prepared again for today, Ken, you were talking about giving like from this place of not even necessarily expecting something in return, right? Really, truly like what you just described, making that connection with someone because you want to help fulfill the need that that person has. And what a beautiful opening that creates in a relationship. And that's really what we're talking about here is the who's that we know, the ways in which we can build relationship, and the ways in which that enriches our own lives and our communities. Because when you said he who cannot smile should not keep shop, I think that's how you said it,
Yeah.
that proverb. Like, it's almost like I hear you saying, if we can't bring our best, if we can't bring that smile and unlock their relationships, like, we have no business being in business. And really, that's not only externally to our customers or clients, but it starts internally, right? So, like at our own businesses or with our own employees, our own families, ourselves, which is, you see that emanating actually from Ken today so beautifully. So what's the value to business? I think in that whole, like, external, we talk about CX, right? The whole thing of being internal and external. How does that work? Can you speak to that for a minute?
Right. Well, there's the main entryway, and then there's the getting into the inner sanctum with people. So number one is the smile to unlock the door. But then there's another magic word that's different for almost every person. And that magic word is their name.
Mm.
So if you don't take a moment to note what a person's name is, and if it's a little bit unusual too, you might just want to say, hey, just so I'm clear, how do you actually pronounce that? Or your name is Samuel. Do you go by Sam or Samuel, or what's your preference? And if somebody says, oh, you can call me whatever you want, say, but like, what do your friends call you? What are your closest friends? Could I be a friend? Do you mind if I call you that? And you've just gone another level closer to that person's heart, that person feeling like, hey, we're connected a little bit more here. And if nothing further than that happens, if you sit beside somebody on a plane, as I did on the way back from Annapolis, and I noticed that the lady next to me had a book that was called Resilient Leadership. And I'm like, boy, that's an interesting title. What is the underlying message there? And we got into a conversation, and I didn't have any ulterior motive, or I wasn't trying to get anything from this lady. But at the end of that 5-hour flight, she was saying like, boy, I really enjoyed our conversation, our little chat. And I said, I did too. And she said, I hope your trip back to Vancouver, because we were driving from Seattle back to Vancouver, British Columbia. And, it was just a refreshing experience, as opposed to just sitting there like a lump for 5 hours and not interfacing with somebody. So it was like a free high, right? 35 feet in the air, a free high, but the flight wasn't free, but the conversation was.
And it's got to be that affects how you then come across to other people, right? You're feeding that high to yourself, and I really get that. And I think you've just had so many amazing life experiences, Ken, and the ways in which you've chosen to look at those and like draw from them to kind of bring these philosophies to life is really pretty amazing. I mean, wouldn't you agree? It seems like you share some stories, and it's not just like you're sharing things that happen to you in your life. You're sharing the perspective that you've chosen to take from that life experience. I mean, how in the world have you cultivated that? I mean, even and I've heard stories from you from even when you were a very young man, like probably in your teens, and still it was the lesson or the perspective you took from that. That's timeless.
Yes, I think one of the things that I discovered early on is that, a lot of people have extraordinary posture or experiences or fame or achievements that almost seem like they're unapproachable, but there's only in one aspect of their life that they have that. And I had the good fortune, for, a specific reason. I'm a complete incurable car nut. I always was since I was a little kid. I bought my first car when I was 13, but I chose to move to Hollywood, California, not to be in the movies, but to get a particular car, a Corvette at that time. And I got a job down there working in a service station. And there was more than one location of that service station. So one was in Hollywood and one was in Bel Air. So I met, the Beach Boys and Elvis Presley and Jan and Dean and Johnny Cash and all these different individuals through the thickness of their windshield, because we used to wash people's windows and check their air pressure and check their oil and all that kind of thing, and try and sell them, new windshield wiper blades and all this kind of thing. But I realized that, okay, these people are approachable. You get a chance at Andy Williams was another one, Juliet Prowse, all these different people. But the bottom line was is that those people still have other voids in their life other than just the little thing that they have. And a lot of people hesitate to approach them because they find them daunting. And what I did discover when I got into conversations with a number of these people, that they were actually lonely in some sense, because there's only a very tiny percentage of people that have the acumen, whether it's in sports or acting or singing or writing music or whatever it happens to be. So there's a whole area in their lives that needs to be fulfilled. And so some are tremendous and some are not so tremendous. Some of the people that were so easy to talk to were like Sammy Davis Sr., for example. Sammy Davis's father, and he was the founder of the Will Maston Trio. And he came into our service station in a brand new Lincoln car. And he said, like, yeah, why don't you guys tell me something more about those Atlas Plycron tires? And we were all trained up to talk about why they were good and everything. And we gave him the whole presentation. And he said, I think I'll take a set of those, let's go ahead and write them up. And I said, but your car's brand new. And he says, I know, but you just put them on the shelf. I'll probably come back and get it later. And what I figured out was that he just wanted somebody to talk to. Like, he'd already been very successful and famous, and he was kind of beyond his prime. His son was now the main thing. And so many people, the daughter of the family that founded the Mattel toy company, used to come around and, just chat us up, because like when you're very unique and very accomplished in a certain field, 99.9% of other people are not in that space, so it's just people are free to access. And when you get over the fact that you, maybe are feeling a little bit intimidated by them, there's probably something that you can bring to the table, even just curing their loneliness, or just having them have a regular conversation about day-to-day situations, as opposed to, being all goo-gaw about what, they get so much of that kind of stuff that it's just, once I had discovered that, I just like that this is, like a free positive experience. And if you embrace it and you are around other people that have appreciated the same thing, it's not about who I am or about who you are, it's about those other people. And if you have a conversation with somebody and you structured in such a way that they do 80% of the talking in that conversation, they're going to think it was a wonderful conversation because they did most of the talking. So it's about, asking the right questions and then just letting it kind of, cascade onto you and enjoying what people can share.
That favorite radio station for everybody, right? The WIIFM, what's in it for me kind of thing. You just have a great way of tuning into that with the questions. And when you're talking about cars, it's got to be one of the best conversation starters. The way you bring that up, I put it in the chat, like, just what's your favorite car? Like, anybody would have something to say to that. And it comes from this authentic kind of interest that you have. But whatever that is for somebody, right? That ability to build a relationship from and build a bridge with a question that allows somebody to reveal a little something about themselves. Not like dark, deep secrets, just a conversation, a point of contact with that person, like their favorite car.
It's a great conversation starter. And of course, when you're at a shopping mall or you're somewhere where you see somebody getting into a really nice car, getting out of a really nice car, a lot of times it's like, wow, that's a nice car. How long have you had that or something? And people light up because it was their choice. It's what they identify as. And, even if you're not a car person, if one car looks nice or another one doesn't. And then where does it take you if you did nothing more than make the person feel a little bit proud and, hey, have a nice day, and off you go, So it's just being the first person to kind of open up some interaction that could lead to who knows what. So many people have met, on just kind of a random way like that, and then they become fast friends or maybe spouses or something. It's just like, if you don't talk to somebody, you're never going to develop a relationship. And one of my favorite mentors and speakers was Og Mandino. He's somebody that, he shared a story about how he was in a terrible rainstorm one time riding along with his wife and children in the car. The car kind of broke down on the side of the road, and he didn't really know much about cars. And many people are the same way. You go like, it stopped working, I guess I'll open the hood. So you look at the engine and like, that doesn't do anything just looking at it, right? Many people are that way, but there was a gentleman that appeared to be like a homeless individual and kind of, a little bit scary looking. And he came over and he said, "Hey, what's the problem?" And he went and locked the doors. He thought, "Oh my gosh, I hope this person is not going to be a threatening person or harm my family." And he said, "Let me have a look." This gentleman that was, unfortunate and possibly homeless. And he took a look at it and knocked a couple of things and shook a couple of wires. He says, "Try it again." And it started. And he said, "Boy, that was a lesson for me, because I've never met somebody that didn't know something I didn't know. I'd kind of prejudged this person as, being kind of at the bottom of the food chain, but he knew how to get my car started and to get me home." And he said, "I've never met somebody that there wasn't something that I couldn't help them with." So the bottom line is, whoever you are, whoever you think you are, on kind of the totem pole of success, there's, collaboratively, we can all, it takes a village, I guess. Somebody said something like that too. And so there's always some tremendous value in people if you're willing to look for it. And that's how you enrich yourself, by, just really embracing all of the people that you can interface with and actually communicate with. So it's just, there's a book that I read called Cybernetics, which is by Maxwell Maltz. And the underlying message in the book is to lead, steer, guide, direct, or control by asking questions. And what it means is that if you're in a conversation, if you're asking the questions, you kind of got your hands on the wheel, where the conversation's going. If you're just answering the questions, then somebody else is kind of in control of where things are going. So just to kind of set out with a positive expectation in a conversation, have a few questions in mind and ask people questions that you already know the answer, that they know the answer to, so they're comfortable. It's like, so here we are in Maryland. Are you from Maryland originally? No, actually, I'm from, Illinois. Oh, really? How long and so they know where they're from and they know how long they've been there. And, all of a sudden, this kind of opens the can of conversation up. And then from there, who knows where it goes, but it's just being engaged is something that is just so much more productive than just kind of watching things pass you by.
Oh, that's exactly right, Ken. In my opinion, and I'm hearing you talk about smiling. I'm hearing you talk about asking somebody their name. I'm hearing you talk about asking questions to engage. And then there's a couple other things that I notice you doing that you're not even actually saying, but you're always like taking notes, no matter where you are, what you're doing. And you could think that at some point in life, like, do we ever stop learning? Do we ever seriously look right? Like always taking notes and listening. And so I feel like you bring an air of constantly learning, and then I think that too creates an opening with another person when they feel you kind of listening, and like you really are there to kind of learn from that person, like what there is to learn from a conversation, whether it's what they're reading or where they're from, and just to like build that relationship, building who from that, because you're paying attention and then you listen. You're just an amazing listener, so that allows you to reflect that back to people. And I think that has people lean in, and it really does kind of create those who's around you. I wouldn't mind shifting gears just a bit to kind of the role that you're playing now in your life as a chief relationship officer. I mean, what a perfect title for for somebody who's talking about not what you know, but who you know. And I'd like to hear from you actually what that title even means to you, chief relationship officer.
Well, I think you might be able to detect that I enjoy meeting people and having relationships with them anyways. So it's like getting paid for making friends, you know.
uh,
And, most people, if you would ask them, do you want to be successful? I think most people would say they want to be successful, but what does that really mean to them? Being successful, in my mind anyways, is being in the process of creating that which is most important to you. So what's important to me might be totally different than what's important to you. So I might have these grandiose ideas of a big, beautiful mansion and a a yacht and an expensive car, and your ideal situation might be living in a a log cabin out in the woods and feeding the squirrels and interfacing with nature and what have you. So both of those are a success based on what it is that you have in mind. We're all so unique and so different. And so another one of my favorite books is called The Celestine Prophecy, which is written by James Redfield. It's Celestine. And that is a book that really taps into your imagination. So this is a book that was written by a gentleman that my wife and I actually had on a team that we had years ago. He was a social worker, and he wrote this book, and it was so compelling that eventually they made a movie about it. But the magic of the book is that by reading that book, if 1,000 people read the book, there'd be 1,000 different interpretations of it, because it's all about your imagination. But the underlying message is that everything you could ever want to achieve that success, whatever the definition of that is going to pass past you. It's going to be right there in front of you, but your awareness is probably only going to select certain different things. Like 100 people could be in a certain room and all walk away with a different one or two different things that jump out. And our experience in Annapolis was so like, it was such like an overwhelmingly carefully put together mosaic of different features and everything in that place that we stayed, that incredible hotel, that even though we were there for almost a week, I'm sure a lot of us didn't see a lot of the different things that were there. But the whole thing is that it's an abundance mentality. Everything you could want is there for you, but you seldom find what you're not looking for. And so when you're looking for something, even if you talk to somebody or have an experience with somebody and isn't really precisely what you want, it's kind of like a puzzle. All kinds of different pieces and parts come together, and you kind of file a lot of that stuff away. Then when you have a conversation with somebody, a year or 2 or 10 years down the road, there's just some little fragment of something that you could mention that just really kind of keeps the conversation going, because you've got the tiniest bit of information about whether they're into sailing or whether they're into motorcycles or whether they're into raising orchids or whether they're wanting to start an orphanage, whatever it happens to be, just to kind of keep things rolling along. And then, it's the experience that really has the richness, that just, interacting with people. I mean, I think people had a tremendous amount of depletion of their mental capacity during the COVID experience because we were blocked off from people in a lot of ways. And I don't know if we'll ever be able to measure the impact that it had on people, and certainly on children not being in school and that sort of thing. So it's there, it's free for us to embrace, and there's no cost to it. There's no shortage of it. So getting to know people is something that has tremendous value itself, but then it gives you the richness of directing traffic. Like, what do you need? I got a guy for that. I got a lady for that. I've got an app for that. I know a company for that. And so, when all of a sudden you become this person, like, I think I'll just check with Susan Marie. I mean, she must know something. She's had tremendous success in her life. She was a very accomplished, lawyer, and she spent many years in that field. She's built a lot of different teams and organizations. She's a chief people officer. What's that about, right? And so you can really direct people to a resource. And then when it comes back to somebody wondering how might they bless you, they're going to remember you because you were very generous with the recommendations that you could make, all based on who you know rather than what you know.
Oh my gosh, Ken, thank you for that. It's the greatest pleasure as the chief people officer to be able to host conversations like this, like with you. And I think that there may be some business owners that are tuning in right now, Ken, that are thinking, boy, you describe building a relationship. I heard it almost like a tapestry, right? Like you keep asking questions and you're building that tapestry. And even at the event that we just were at Annapolis, you're constantly building the tapestry of those relationships inside a company. And I think that there's an overlooked value in that sometimes. I venture to say there's a lot of people listening in that don't have a chief relationship officer at their business, because it's an easy thing to miss the value of the tapestries that we can build and what that can bring to our external interactions. And I think that I know that we're here as part of my core, and that there's a unique culture that is developed there, that in part we're here to share with others, so they can borrow from our experiences, and that it's about who we are, that it does start there. And I think you really have a chance to model that for others.
Well, wouldn't it be wonderful to be like the genie in a bottle and somebody had a wish and you could fulfill that wish? And so many people have a dream that, without kind of the guidance and support and encouragement from somebody else might never become a reality. And I'll, talk about how I became kind of an independent individual, an entrepreneur, if you might say, because I did spend the earlier parts of my life, working for other people. I always worked on a performance basis. I didn't want to have to be averaged out. So I wanted to be, responsible for what I generated. But like many people, I came up with an idea. I thought like, I'd like to own my own business. I'd like to be my own boss. And so I selected something that was kind of dear to my heart because I, indicated earlier, the reason I moved to California is because I was a car nut. And so I had all kinds of race cars and show cars and hot rods and things that made it different color, different wheels, different upholstery, just make it really nice. And then I grew up in a family where we always had boats, and we always had and we still do within the family, a lake home that you could only get there by boat. There's no roads to that place, right? It's a place called Pitt Lake. So, I thought like, I like fixing things up. I like making them look better. I'm used to having boats. You know what I think I'll do? I've discovered this new kind of a coating. It's a 2-part epoxy coating that they use on aircraft and ore cars and fire engines. And like, once you get it on there, you can't scratch it. It'll be shiny all the time. And in those days, a lot of people had a new fiberglass boat. So they get a brand new boat and it looked wonderful for about 3 seasons. And then it started to go kind of dull and oxidized. And they ended up spending more time polishing that boat up than using it. So I thought, I'm going to just, get some people that have boats like that. I'm going to start a shop. I'm going to do a business, and I'm going to paint these boats up, maybe make the old ones look nicer, make the new ones, put a clear coating on. So that was the beginning. And then, that was my dream. I wanted to, be the one that put the paint on, that did all the stuff, right? So I started out, it was just myself and my father. And so we started out and we did 2 or 3 different boats, and people came back. It's like, wow, I love that. I've got a friend, could you do their boat too? And by the way, is there any way that you could sandblast our trailer and put that stuff on the trailer too? And oh yeah, we could do that. And, while you're at it, is there any way that you could kind of put the name of the boat on and the registration? And, oh, we're thinking about replacing the canvas, and gee, there's something wrong with the propeller. And, actually the upholstery should be redone again as well. So we started, bringing all different kinds of people in that could fulfill what those needs are. So it went from 2 of us to 24 to 36 employees. And all of a sudden I woke up one morning and I thought like, wait a minute, my dream was to be the guy that was doing the painting and making it look nice. But I thought like I could own a business, and all of a sudden it felt like the business owned me, because what I didn't understand is that I had to work with workers' compensation and accounts receivable and bylaws and, workers' comp and leases and all these different things that came on top of me. And I thought like, wait a minute, now this business owns me. I don't own the business. And it hadn't even occurred to me at that time that I should really keep the right kind of notes or, bookkeeping or anything like that. And eventually it just became too much for me to even manage. I had to really close that business down, basically go bankrupt, because my success was my demise. So when I came across not so long ago a service like, all inclusive, where you could actually have bookkeeping, payroll, benefits, HR, all the different things that a business owner really doesn't want to do, but there's no choice whether you're going to do it or not. You must keep your books. You've got to be, pay people. You've got to make sure that you're compliant. You've got to keep the IRS happy. And if I could hand that off to somebody else and being the guy like I originally wanted in there, putting the paint on, making it look nice, that would have been a dream come true for me. And I would have given just, almost anything to be able to get that off my plate. And I think that just about every person that owns a business, whether it's a solopreneur or whether it's somebody with a medium or larger business, it's something that, as much as it's not really taking money that you're not already spending and trying to come up with some kind of a luxury, it's a mandatory thing that you must do in running a business. And when you can do it conveniently, affordable, it's a natural thing to do. So talking about being able to help people, bless people, help them make their dream a reality, that's the difference between just kind of being so overwhelmed with a lot of details, a lot of minutia, a lot of administrative, as opposed to selling your widget or delivering your service or whatever it happens to be. It's just the catalyst that takes somebody from overwhelm to being overwhelmed with being happy instead of being overwhelmed with being overburdened with these different responsibilities, because there's nothing worse than finding out that you didn't know what you didn't know, and now you've got to pay the piper for it.
And you didn't get in business to do that aspect of it. I mean, most business owners didn't. They got into business to do the thing that they love, like you're describing with working on the boats, and had started with the cars. And you are ahead of your time, Ken, for sure, in that progression, I think, that you described, although it is certainly the time in which we're living. I mean, I've got statistics here that say that there have been 10 million plus businesses that were formed in the past 2 years. That a record amount of new business entities were formed in 2021 and 2022. Like, it's, I think, much more common actually today. And like my own kids talk about, I mean, yeah, they've got jobs, but what they're aspiring to do is to start a business. And what you're just describing, Ken, boy, if we can help people get off on the path of right out of the gate, launching that business properly, right? So that you don't have to find yourself years down the road, like you're describing, where it got away from you. I'm sorry to say, in your situation, I think that happens for a lot of business owners. Like, oh my gosh, and now I'm paying people with Venmo, and I don't even know where to begin. And I'm sure that has a lot to do with why the relationships that we are able to cultivate, even at my core with our clients, and to have a dedicated person to help navigate all of that is such a unique experience. I'm sure you'd agree.
Yeah, I mean, the software that is on an airplane, for example, I know that you left from Oregon and went to Maryland. I left from British Columbia, actually drove to Seattle, Washington, and then flew to Annapolis. And that airplane doesn't just, go off the ground and set a straight line. It's got like a gyroscope. Like if you were able to follow, you don't feel it much on the plane, but it has to keep readjusting for, winds or tailwinds. I know it was a shorter time getting to Annapolis than it was coming back, because tailwinds, headwinds, all that kind of thing. So we can be a gyroscope for somebody that's running a business, and they're just as unconscious of it as we are when we're sitting in an airplane thinking like, man, how long, this is getting uncomfortable. Am I going to lean, please put your tray table up, but I was leaning on that, and finally you arrive. But in the meantime, the software is handling that. So if you can just be that person that takes that consideration away with somebody, and they can just focus on what it is that they're trying to do, how do you put a price tag on that? And it's something that they're already spending money on, whether they're doing the work themselves or whether they're using individual service providers. Because the one thing with us here at MyCore is it's all in one, but it's not all or nothing. So it's an a la carte situation. So as a business develops and grows, they might need just something very entry level, maybe payroll, maybe bookkeeping. And as time goes on, they can maybe add benefits or add accounting or add different things that they need at the right time. And that's the one thing that I always love to be in integrity about, is because the people that we have that are licensed and do the continuing education, they're licensed to cover these services in all 50 states. And they are a W-2 employee. So it doesn't make a penny's difference to them on payday, whether they get somebody to take a very comprehensive, expensive plan or maybe just an entry-level plan. So we can honestly recommend which is in the best interest of that individual. And if you were, wanting to go and pick something up, and you were going to go to a rental company to get a vehicle to do it, if you're going to get a lazy boy chair, I hope you're not going to rent a 40-foot semi-trailer. But on the same other hand, if you're going to move an entire household worth of furniture, you're probably not going to go and get a van, right? So you want to be very, conscious of the needs of somebody. It's a consultative selling situation where you can actually prescribe which is in the best interest of that individual. And now you're doing exactly the same thing that we talked about in the beginning, just really treating people with respect and out of kindness. And whether they subscribe to what you recommended or not, you've done it for the right reason, to help people, not just looking at it as a kind of a one-time situation. And because this is something that people need on a long term, once people find a way that they can deal in one source, one individual, because they get one individual that they can contact all the time. They're not calling an 800 number. They're not leaving messages. They're not being called back by a different individual once they've had an initial conversation. So it just becomes such a convenient, valuable service for people to have that, people appreciate that. And there's, a paycheck is nice. Building a business is nice, but there's something very special about being genuinely appreciated by people by doing something. We've all got to do something anyways, unless we inherited some kind of a fortune. And that's another nightmare too, because when you see some of the messes that people get into that have a lot of money, they you don't wish for what you might not want to have. It's just, sometimes it's a mystery to see the chaos that people go through when you thought like, wow, that was really a wonderful blessing because somebody won the lottery. And then you go like, oh my gosh, it's the worst thing that could have happened to them, right? So we're having fun and we're helping people. And I think that's the most important element to what makes me smile, even if I'm not intentionally doing it.
I love that. And that's infectious for sure.
Yeah.
Like our founder sometimes says that nothing fails like success, right? Like it sometimes like can get away from you. And I wonder, I actually had not heard you tell that story in that way, Ken, about your business that you had started way back, and then it eventually not having that business. And you got to wonder if you had a dedicated person yourself, back then that has the relationship. See, that now it goes back to your role as the chief relationship officer. If you can have the person that you have the relationship with as a business owner, who then has the relationships that are trusted, that are the solutions, like you were mentioning, whether it's workers' comp or whether you got to worry about the being compliant with taxes or your 401ks, whatever the case may be, you've got legal needs, whatever that is, you've got wellness issues among your employees. If you had that one person that could be your point of contact to serve you, to come alongside you with your business, what difference that might have even made for you back in the day.
Yeah, it's like a city or a state or, a county or something. You need infrastructure, but you don't expect one organization or one little, department to be able to do everything. And when you consolidate the different relationships that you develop, you've got a lot greater support for your mental well-being. I mean, there's, one of the things that happens, I think, with a lot of business owners is that they get so much stress eventually that it has a tendency to affect your health. There's only so much that your mind can process before it starts to burn out. It's like getting in your car, turning it on, not even putting in gear, and put your foot on the floor until the engine finally blows up, right? There's only so much that you can handle. So it's the collective that makes the experience so much more enriching, and everybody benefits then. Everybody gets an opportunity to play their part, the part that they choose, the part that they enjoy the most.
Well, and I agree. I think then we get to each bring our best, and it makes for a richer experience, a richer environment, and you get to have community and fun along the way. I love when you're talking about the fun, because it harkens back to when you were describing how much you appreciate Og Mandino and others that you've studied over the years. And I remember you telling me something about Jim Rohn, who's another amazing legend to so many of us, but that feeling sometimes that as you progress in life of being alone, and how like unfulfilling that can be if you don't have the relationships.
Yeah. And, no one individual is, the cure to everything. I think of, it's baseball season right now, for example, and there's a young man named Aaron Judge that is with the New York Yankees. That's the Yankees have had a tremendous, reputation over many years. And so he's considered probably one of the best baseball players ever. But, that team is not doing well. Really, they're not doing well at all this year because it's not about one person. It's about the collective, like if you're a good hitter and a good fielder, like who's going to cover first, second, third base, left field, center field, shortstop, everybody's got their role to play. And so the bottom line is it's the same in life. You can't be all things to all people, nor would you want to be, because then you're just a wandering generality. It's like, there's some people that are just kind of like the handyman, like, hey, call Joe, he can do anything. He can do anything, but he's the jack of all trades, master of none. And so what we've done at MyCore is that we've actually carefully selected the people that are the greatest in every field, but a lot of times they're maybe too big to fail. They're not easily reachable. So what we do is we have, that personal contact, and instead of going directly to them, we go through that individual that is actually the representative to each and every client. And they, you foster a relationship. Like that's really, I guess, the answer to the question, like, what is a chief relationship officer? It's all about us developing relationships. When somebody needs something, they know they call that one person all the time. They might call, Natalia, or they might talk to to Laura, or they might talk to somebody that is assigned to there. It's just like having somebody in your office that, covers the loose ends for you, but you take what you need and leave the rest. And so, I think there's a very few people in America today that haven't been on a subway, in a subway food lineup. And you're going through, you're grabbing your lunch, and you notice that the person in front of you picked different bread and different veggies and different protein than the one behind you. But everybody at the end of the day, at the end of the line, pays, and hopefully they're all happy because they chose what they wanted. Do you want anchovies? No, I hate them. Hey, do you want olives? Yeah, give me double, And so what we do, once again, is that we let you choose what is going to be the best recipe for your success, but you do it out, all check out at the same spot. You have the same convenience and affordability. And there's very few companies that you could call in the evening or on the weekend or in a different time zone or something. When you're assigned to one individual, you're just carrying on a conversation. You're carrying on a relationship. You're talking to somebody that already knows who you are, where you are in your growth experience. And it's something like, it's one of these things like, why didn't somebody think of that a long time ago? And of course, that's the blessing of our founder and CEO, Nathan Bourne, because he came up with this idea in its roughest format 7 years ago, and then almost 5 years ago, refined it to where we are today. And it's just something that everybody needs. Most people haven't heard of, everybody could afford. And once they see it, it seems like 100% of people see like, this is something that I've been needing, and they all have their own story. A little bit about my story, about my rainbow boat restorations nightmare, which was it originally was going to be a dream, and it ended up being a bit of a nightmare, and it sunk. A boat that sunk. That's my next book.
So whereas with MyCore, we're keeping them afloat. I do picture actually Main Street across the country that we are like bolstering, and those 10 million plus new businesses, like we're bolstering those businesses so that we can have this beautiful, thriving community full of the kinds of relationships that you talked about building throughout your life, Ken. And it's no surprise that we're here at this point in our series, our webinar series, and where next time, and I'm hoping, Ken, to maybe bring you back to be part of the conversation, and we might just preview it for a quick second here, but to talk about, and I got the phrase from you about birds of a feather. And we know that it attracts, sometimes that like attracts like, and what our topic's going to be, how couples who can do life together and business together. And I know that you've described already the ways in which you work with your wife, Patty. We have another couple, as well as my husband and I, but another couple that are at MyCore, and the ways in which you're able to work with a couple. And that's a true relationship in a unique way, right? To be able to also bring that to business and how that enriches what we do, by who we are, and look forward to that. That'll be next month in June 14th.
So I just want to clarify the title. Did you say couples that do business together or couples that do the business together?
I knew there was a little twinkle in your eyes for saying that.
We like to have fun, right, Susan Marie?
Ken, we sure do. You've just been a joy to have on today's webinar, the 5th in our series, and just a pleasure how you just embody relationship and the joy that comes with that. Thank you so much. Thanks for your time and your wisdom, your fun, your perspective. I think it's really helps us all be better.
Terrific. I enjoyed it. I hope you did too.
Have a great rest of your day, guys. Thanks for being here.
Bye, everybody.